College basketball conference tournaments are in full swing. We're already seeing teams clinch their bids to the NCAA tournament, but we're getting these major conferences kicking off. And with that in mind, I'm going to be looking at 4 teams that I think can steal bids into the NCAA tournament. So what does that mean? These are teams that are all but assuredly not making the NCAA tournament based on where their season is finished, or some teams that are on the bubble that do need to win their conference tournament in order to get into March Madness. They need to get that auto bid from their conference as opposed to these at-large bids. And with that happening, these bid stealers can steal from teams that are currently on the bubble or might feel like they're already in the tournament from getting in because of those at-large bids being taken away. So there are some teams that have done this quite a bit in the past. Last year, really one that sticks out, Richmond, as the 6th seed in the A-10, knocked off Davidson, getting to the big dance. And then as well, 2021 was a big year for it. Georgetown in the Big East and Oregon State in the Pac-12 managed to Georgetown was one of the worst teams in the Big East during the regular season, miraculously won the conference tournament, got that auto bid for the conference, and created problems for everybody else looking to get in at the at-large spots. So I got 4 teams today. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel as well if you enjoyed. We'll have plenty more content coming this week with game picks, conference picks, ultimately building that bracket, looking at any teams that could pull off some Cinderella runs like St. Peter's. So much content coming, so be sure to subscribe as well. We'll get into these 4 teams. These are our teams both in mid-major conferences and major conferences, because that can happen, like I mentioned, with Richmond, and then the big conferences with Georgetown and Oregon State. The major conferences, for the most part, there could be some teams here that currently are on the bubble but do need to maybe make a big run to be able to make it, and that's where we're going to start. I'm going to start with Utah State in the Mountain West. Currently, there are 3 teams, San Diego State, Boise State, and Nevada, that as of right now look to be in the tournament. And the Aggies right now are on the bubble on the outside looking in, but they have been an analytical darling in terms of the underlying numbers. KenPom's a big driving factor that people look at in college hoops. And KenPom has them ranked 23rd in their adjusted efficiency metric, which is huge. But they've closed the season with a win over Boise State, which was massive, one of those teams that currently looks to be in the tournament. But before that game, they hadn't beaten anybody of those 3 between San Diego State, Boise State, and Nevada. And their best wins in the year were Washington State. They had a win over Oral Roberts in the out-of-conference play. So that's not going to be good enough for them to get in based on that strength of schedule and those quad 1, the inability to pick up those quad 1 wins. But this is a team that is capable, in my mind, of making a run in this tournament. They're a high-volume three-point shooting team, and they are really, really efficient from 3. They're shooting 39.2% from 3 this season. That's 6th in the country. Stephen Ashworth has been unconscious from deep. He's shooting 44.6% from 3. So good. But that's not the only thing that's great about this Aggies team. They have great length to be able to defend between Taylor Funk, Sean Bairstow, and then Dan Aiken. Opponents are shooting 46% from 2 this season. So great three-point shooting team, but also great length to be able to defend inside. And as we look at this Mountain West bracket, I like how things match up for them. New Mexico and Wyoming sit in that early first-round matchup. Utah State, as the 3 seed, does have a bye to the quarterfinal round. New Mexico is a team that I think they would match up really well against. They like to attack inside and score and get to the free throw line. And Utah State, like I mentioned, has been really good defending from 2, thanks to that length they have on the interior. Wyoming, on the other hand, could give them some problems because Utah State's had some trouble defending the 3, but Wyoming's one of the country's worst defenses. So I think even if they were to make it through that matchup with New Mexico, going to back-to-back days and having to take down this high-powered Utah State offense would be a problem. Boise State would be that team they meet up with in the semifinal, most likely. They're coming off that win over Boise State. I think it's a really big-time toss-up game, because Boise State, these 2 teams are very different. Boise State's a great defense. Utah State's a great offense. So the difference will be how Utah State defends the 3, how they match up in terms of defensively, and then for Boise State, how well can they shoot it offensively. But I do think Utah State is in a great spot here to be able to make a run in this tournament and potentially win it. A matchup with San Diego State wouldn't be one that I would leave them out of. I know they haven't been able to win against them this year, but in this tournament, I like how the bracket breaks down for them. They're definitely a team that I would be betting on to win this conference and ultimately look to as a bid stealer this season. Next team up, we're switching things over to these major conferences. The ACC has been a conference that has really underwhelmed this season, but there are still a number of teams that are firmly in the dance. One team that is sitting on the bubble that I do like to potentially win this conference, they're plus 600 on the odds board, is Clemson. I love the way the bracket breaks down for Clemson. Clemson is in a really good spot here to be able to get through this tournament because they are the number 3 seed in the conference. They are getting a bye all the way to that quarterfinal in a conference where we have every single team playing. They're basically getting a double bye here, so very nice for their chances. Sydney on the bubble, like I mentioned, their signature wins, a lot of them come in conference play, Duke, NC State, Pitt, and then a win over Penn State. So they're really missing any of these bigger wins on the schedule. That is the reason that they're right now on the outside looking in. But I think at the very least, if they made it to the final, I think they could potentially be in. But a conference tournament win will, of course, will assure their spot in the NCAA tournament. Offensively, very simple. A team where everything works through about 2 guys. PJ Hall has been a dynamic player for them up front and around the rim, and Chase Hunter has been their guy outside at the guard spot. Everything works through Hall. He has an almost 30% usage rate this season, and he kicks out to their shooters on the perimeter. They're taking about 40% of their shots from 3. Hunter's been great. Hunter Tyson has been great as well. He's shooting over 41% from 3. So Hall works things inside, really pressures opposing defenses around the rim, and he's able to create open looks for those guards around the perimeter. So love what they do offensively, and I love, like I mentioned, their draw in tournament play. It starts with that bye that I mentioned earlier, but NC State is that team, as you can see on the bracket, is the one they're likely to see. Virginia Tech could be a little spicy in terms of a matchup with NC State as well, but I think they match up well against either of those teams. But NC State specifically, they sit as that likely opponent for them. They beat them by double digits in both of their matchups this season. It's just one that it seems like NC State hasn't been able to figure out whether they're at home or on the road. We're getting a neutral site here. I think Clemson would be sitting as a pretty decent favorite in this matchup between these two teams. So I like them there. And in this conference, or this side of the bracket as well, Virginia's of course with them, but North Carolina is sitting in that sneaky spot as the 7 seed here. And the big thing for me would be for Virginia having to get through the potential of that blue blood in North Carolina. If they matched up with either one of them, I think they would, of course, be pretty competitive games. I like what Clemson can do if they matched up with UNC in terms of UNC being a team that relies so heavily on Armando Bacot. Virginia is a great defense, but they're not all that efficient offensively. And what I love in these tournament formats, in these, win in advance formats, is great free throw shooting teams. Clemson's one of the best in the country. They're making their free throws at almost an 80% clip this season, 79.3%. I think the way this bracket breaks down for them is very, very nice, being able to avoid Duke, who has great length to defend, Miami, who can stress them on the inside. Those teams are on the other side of the bracket. And again, they've beaten Duke earlier this season as well. So I think a Duke-Clemson matchup is really likely in this conference tournament. Clemson's plus 600 on the odds board to win it. I would be betting on them, and I think they could steal a bid in this conference tournament here. Our third team, heading back to these mid-major conferences, a team, maybe some of you, if you paid attention to last season in the Big Dance, UAB is in Conference USA. They're currently looking as a team that won't be able to make the tournament just with the way in Conference USA. It's not much of a league that I would expect to see 2 bids, but I think it could happen. Florida Atlantic is the number 1 seed in this conference. They've had a terrific year, and I think the potential of them having an at-large bid is there. They were ranked earlier this season as well. They're a team that's been dynamic from 3, and in the case that they don't win this tournament, as long as I think they make the final or win a couple of games, which I think won't be a problem for them, there's a good chance they could earn an at-large bid. And the winner of this tournament, whether it's UAB like I mentioned or a North Texas, could put them in a spot to be able to have 2 teams make the tournament. But I love UAB as the team to be able to do that. They made the tournament in 2021 on the backs of Jelly Walker. He is a dynamic scorer, one of the best in the country. He's a terrific 3-point shooter. He's shooting 39% this season from deep. But this is a team that actually, beyond Walker, does have a lot of good depth. Trey Jemison and KJ Buffin were 2 players they brought in last season as transfers. They have another year at the program. They added Eric Gaines as a transfer from LSU that's fit in really nicely. This is a team that has another year together, has looked good, but they were missing Jelly Walker for a good portion of the year. Back in January, he missed a bunch of time. So getting him back, they've looked really, really good to close out the season. Walker's been a great three-point shooter, but otherwise they're a team that attacks the rim and gets to the free throw line. And in this conference tournament, if we look at the bracket, the North Texas UAB side of the bracket, that's what I really like here, because I know UAB has lost both games to North Texas earlier this year, but one of them was without Walker and the other was on the road in overtime. So I think in a third matchup, I do think that UAB is in a good spot to beat them. North Texas is a team that struggles to keep opponents off the line. They're 336th in opponent free throw rate this season, so have success there. And North Texas is a team that plays very slow, takes a number of threes. UAB is a top 90 team in three-point defense this season. I like the matchup there. I think they have a great opportunity to be able to get through to this final on that side of the bracket. This is a top-heavy conference in my mind. I think between them being the 2 and 3, and then FIU, LA Tech, Rice, UTSA, I don't think a lot of those teams pose any problems. If a Middle Tennessee or a Charlotte were there, they're on the other side, or Western Kentucky, those are some better teams in the conference, but the ones they have, I wouldn't be too concerned about. So if we get UAB getting to this championship game against Florida Atlantic, what I really like is, like I mentioned, they're a great three-point defense. FIU is really, really reliant on the three, and that's going to be very important in that title game, is being able to defend the three against FIU if they're there. They lost by 2 to FAU on the road, but actually won by 9 at home. They're one of the 3 teams that has beaten FAU this season. So the matchup here is good. I think they can pose some problems in a potential championship game with FAU, but more importantly, I love their path to be able to get to this title game. They're a very, very good team that's hitting their stride ever since getting Walker back about a month ago. I like them as a team to win this conference and steal another bid in the NCAA tournament. Last one up. This one's definitely a bit of a long shot. Washington State in the Pac-12. I think they're listed at plus 2,500 to win the conference tournament. So $10 bet, pay $250. I think it's worth it. I think the juice is worth the squeeze with this Washington State team. Now, in the Pac-12, there are 3 teams that are all but locked in to the NCAA tournament. That's UCLA, Arizona, and USC. Arizona and USC, 2 teams that Washington has beaten. They beat Arizona on the road, and they beat USC at home. So proven to be able to take down those 2 teams. I like what they do offensively. They're very similar in my mind to Clemson. They rely on their big man in Mohamed Gay. They compete really well on the glass thanks to him. Everything offensively works through him. He's got a 27% usage rate this season and kicks out to those guards, much like I mentioned with Clemson. 43.3% of their shots are from 3, so considered to be a pretty high volume three-point shooting team. And they've got a couple really good three-point shooters in Justin Powell and Jabe Mullins. They're both shooting over 40% from 3 this season. This is a team I think that can pose a lot of problems. The big thing with this conference between Arizona, USC, and UCLA, those are 3 teams that score inside, that are very reliant on their bigs and to be able to score around the rim. And Washington State has been good defensively there because of Gay being that sizable man up front. But what I'm looking to and why I like Washington State, I was considering Utah as potentially that team, but they've been on a bit of a skid here, and I think their path is a little bit tougher. For Washington State, in a matchup with UCLA, because as you can see on the bracket here, they would line up to play UCLA on that side of the bracket, which does make things a little bit more difficult. It's a team they haven't beaten this season, but as the 5 seed here, they do get a nice path. I like Cal's been atrocious, maybe one of the worst Power 5 team or Power 6 teams in the country this season. I don't think they're going to have a problem in that opening round. In the quarterfinal, a matchup with Oregon is nice. Oregon is a team that wants to score from 3, but has been really inefficient there. And I like Mohamed Gay in that matchup with N'Faly Dante to be able to limit what they do inside. So I think they make that semifinal against UCLA. And I think the big thing here for UCLA, they're a team that's very, very good in terms of defensively. Offensively, of course, very good too as well between Tiger Campbell, Jaime Jaquez. But the one thing I think about with them is the way to be able to beat them, I think, is they're a team that scores exclusively from inside. They're not a good three-point shooting team. They don't take many threes at all. If this Washington State team gets very hot from deep, which they've proven to be able to do this season, I think this is the type of team that can just all of a sudden is making their threes at like a 40% rate in every game. They just can't miss, and nobody can beat them because 3 points is more than 2 points. That's a very simple-minded way to think of it. But Washington State, I think, in this conference has a good chance to be able to make a run here. And I think they're a very, very good team that is going a little bit under the radar. And in this conference tournament play, they're plus 2,500. They pay you very nicely if you want to bet on it. They're another team that could sneakily steal a March Madness bid and make the big dance. All right, those are our 4 teams: Utah State, Clemson, UAB, and Washington State. If you guys do want to bet on these conference tournaments, I'll include a link down to DraftKings down below in the description and in the comment section. They're one of the couple books that you'll be able to bet on these conference tournaments or bet on teams to make the big dance. But again, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to let me know. Drop a like, comment down below with any teams you like to be able to win these conferences, potentially steal an auto bid, and make things a little crazy for Selection Sunday. But again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.